Greetings. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Podcast, and welcome to the first podcast of Leaders with Leaders. And that's Leaders with Liters. So we're sitting here, we got some Crown Royal, we got some Crystal Head, we got some Gentleman Jack in the back, some mixers, but most importantly what we have here are two amazing teammates of mine that I'm really excited to introduce. To my left, Chief Master Sergeant Rob Zackery. Rob Zackery is currently the 71st Ops Group Chief out of Vance Air Force Base here in Oklahoma. And next to him, Chief Master Sergeant, soon to be retired, Mark Hurst, who retired here out of the 552nd Air Control Wing. And the best part is all three of us were TACPs. All three of us grew up together. I'm getting ready to retire here in the next 6 months or so. Zack came out on the command chief list, so we're hoping he gets the job here shortly. And Leaders with Leaders is a step towards three different goals, probably four different goals. Number one, just kind of want to humanize a chief position. A lot of people, what I found out as a command chief was that airmen don't talk to me because I'm a chief, NCOs don't talk to me because I'm a command chief, and only senior NCOs really don't want to talk to me, just want to complain about shit all day long. So this is one of those things to try and bridge that gap. Secondly, I really want to humanize the command chief position, because at the end of the day, we're just three dudes. We're all three fathers. We're all three husbands. We were airmen together and grew up together. So we didn't just join, we became command chiefs. So hopefully you can see some of the banter that we have back and forth. And then, at the end, I just kind of want you to see us agree. I want you to hear us disagree. I want you to hear us talk about different things and how we view leadership, some of the different experiences. So both of these guys, career TACPs, Ranger experience for these guys, Special Forces experience for me. One of our few 9G positions, reaching out, that's very rare for a TACP to do. We can normally kind of just go right to a command chief gig. And then Mark was also an instructor at Senior NCO Academy, one of our wounded warriors. And so we'll get into more of that stuff as we get through. But to Zack and Mark, thank you for being here on this inaugural episode of the Cape Lead Podcast.
Appreciate it, man.
So cheers, guys. Let's do this, and let's have some fun tonight.
Prost.
Prost. And the podcast isn't about glamorizing alcohol, but at the end of the day, I think we're all aware that all squadron problems get solved inside the squadron bar. In this forum, I don't have to call it a heritage room. So we go there, we get a little bit of truth lube, some honesty serum, just the free flowing of information, of opinions is kind of what happens. So we're going to do that here today. So I'm just going to start out and just kind of ask questions for the guys. So is your experience as a chief master sergeant? What is one of the first most profound things that you learned being a chief, and how is that affecting you today?
First.
Me first, huh?
Yeah.
Most
experience.
profound thing I learned as a chief, huh? Man, I should have looked at these questions before I came in.
How about this? So I would say the reason I asked that is because I was working on MAGCOM staff at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, and I was on MAGCOM staff, and one of my first experiences as a chief was absolutely horrible, because I saw how efficiently I could get things done now as a chief, which then just became a huge slap in the face of the previous 2 years that the same people I was working with now as a chief, they wouldn't do shit for me because I was a senior. So that was really upset. So that was one of the things, because I was a 2%er yesterday, and just because I'm a 1%er today, do I get treated that much differently? I was your teammate yesterday. You could have done the same stuff for me. So that sadly was my initial foray into the chief world. And so I hate using negative examples, but man, that was really profound for me.
So I'll just give you this. One of the things that struck me when I made chief was, and I was actually kind of disappointed in it, because I thought once you made chief, and we were all chiefs, that we could have a discussion sort of like we're having right now with any chief in a room. We can go have a talk with dignity and respect. Obviously some people have been in longer, and you give them the dignity and respect that they deserve, as you would give any human, right? But we could have a real conversation. And I realized pretty quickly that there's these unwritten levels of chiefdom that I used to call them. And that disappointed me, man. It really did. And to be in a conversation with somebody, and then another person walk in who happened to be a chief who had happened to be a chief a little bit longer than us and maybe had some different roles than us, and then the person just shut off because that person walked in the room. Was disappointing to me. And I've never understood it, and as a matter of fact, I tried to kind of stamp it down in many cases. My last assignment, actually, I rolled in, and I would walk into work in the morning, and I'd run into airmen, and they would say, "Good morning, Command Chief." And I was like, "What in the world?" So the first time I had all of our senior enlisted leaders together, I was like, "Hey, first order of business, man, I need your help. Command Chief is not a rank. It's duties and responsibilities. Tomorrow I could be a squadron chief right here, and then all of a sudden airmen would treat me differently, and there's something wrong with that." And I told them a story about my initial experience as a chief, and how I disagreed with the fact that there's levels of chiefdom. There's not. There's duties and responsibilities are different, absolutely. But if we give each other dignity and respect along the way, there's no reason why we can't have a serious debate and conversation and get after things together.
I like to strap hang on that, this lack of transparency. So I thought you made chief, hey, we're all good to go. There's no E10. So how come we can't communicate with each other? And there was a lack of transparency with some individuals. And I saw some pedigree, which I necessarily don't agree with. Are we talking about jobs and people we work for, or are we talking about our capabilities and our sacrifice? But some positive things, I had to be cautious of what I said. So before, as an E7 or E8, oh, it's a good idea. We should put some more ice in that bucket and make the ice circle, not square. Now as a chief, when I say that, tomorrow, the ice is going to be circle, not square. So I got to be cautious of what I say out loud.
Whispers become shouts.
Yes, yeah. So I think that's the big observation.
The three most powerful words in the Air Force. The chief said.
Yes, yes. For good or for bad.
Yeah, right. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
The chief said I could do this.
Yeah.
So I want to get your thoughts on a concept, and by all means, if you want to raise the BS flag, please do. Is one of the things that I've talked about recently and had a discussion with one of my flights where I called out the flight chief kind of in front of the whole flight. And the thing is I understand that we want to give all professional courtesy to somebody according to their rank. However, there's a lot of conversation that gets blocked off with that, and it's a barrier to transparency.
Right.
So I think for a lot of the betterment of the team, and I'm not saying we need to put them on a whipping post, in front of the whole flight and beat them, or in front of the whole squadron and beat them, but I personally think that there's a measure of transparency where you got to call some people out, regardless of rank, just to keep an honest flow of information going. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll put you on spot first. I'll take this one.
Okay.
All right. I do that too, but I have to have two elements there. One is I have to expose my vulnerabilities as well, and then it has to come from a place of love. So when I put a person out on the spot, it's not for malice. It's a teaching moment. It's from a place of love, but I'm not going to expose them without talking about my shortcomings, whether it's recent or in the past, or maybe the same mistake. So hey, we're talking about X, Y, and Z because of, Tech Sergeant so-and-so did X, Y, but I did the same thing when I was in his shoes, right? And it's not because I'm trying to embarrass him. We're trying to learn together. So
you're trying to tell me that you're a human being leading other human beings?
Yeah, pretty much.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's the two elements. So I do that, but it has to be from a place of love, which I don't do anything for malice.
Okay.
At least not at work, right? Oh, I'm just joking. Being serious. But I expose myself as well when I expose them for whatever we're talking about.
Fair.
I would agree with that. And, one of the things I will add to this, though, I'm a fan of criticizing private, praising public, and so you will find me doing that more often than not.
Sure.
Not that I haven't done what you talked about, and I would agree with Zack. As long as they know you care about them and you love them, and it's coming from a place of hey, we're doing this to grow together, to highlight. Maybe we can make sure that the next level of leaders that are coming up behind that leader won't make the same mistakes. They're going to make mistakes, it's just not going to be that one, hopefully, right? And so Not that I haven't done it, but it's not one of the things. It's not my go-to, if you will. I wouldn't disagree with it in every case. It's situational. And, earlier we were talking about situational leadership, and sometimes that's sometimes it's a boot in the butt, and sometimes it's a talk in private. You just kind of have to assess what that person needs and what's the best for that scenario.
So I could kind of divest this conversation towards whatever, but I'm honestly with you. And like even the guy that I called out in front of everybody, I had a meeting with him prior to. He said, "Hey, the only way to make your flight whole is for this to kind of happen. Like I need to acknowledge their concerns, and I need to let them know that you and I had that conversation, and I need you to be there to hear it. I'm not trying to call you out. I'm not trying to punk you out, but kind of to your like again, done out of love.
Yeah.
Like absolutely good intent. And if you can transmit that intent ahead of time, again, transmit the expectations. Right, these are the expectations for this meeting. Kind of go forward to do that stuff. What I would like to say, kind of along those lines, and the last question I'll go on this before I start talking about some distinct leadership understanding type things. But do we need to bring people to the table sooner? And how would you like to bring people to the table sooner? To the leadership conversation, to the leadership development and growth. I think we're not doing it soon enough because we have Chiefs group meetings. But we don't bring E8s and E7s to chief groups meetings. I don't like that. Or have an airman show up at the 5-6 council. So how do you think that there's a problem and we should try and take distinct steps to bring people to the table sooner, Mark?
I would say yes and no.
Okay.
And I think it depends. And I go back to, one of my things is relationships, right? And really understanding and building a strong enough relationship that the person to your right and left. All the way down to our young airmen, right? And so some of our young airmen, some of our NCOs, they're ready to step up to the next level. They're ready to receive that information. Every PME that I went to, there was somebody in the class that said, "Man, I wish I would have had this 2 years ago." When I was an instructor in PME, there was people in my classroom that said, "I wish I had this 2 years ago." And the reality of it is, some of them were ready for it 2 years ago. Some of them weren't, right? And so as a leader, you have to make that assessment as to when somebody is ready, right? And you're not going to get it right every single time. Sometimes it's a matter of exposing them to it and then just leading those expectations, right? And knowing that, hey, this might not stick right now, right? But one thing I will say, I do believe that we need to integrate more. Integrate as an ACE council or a JET council, a 5-6 council, a top 3, and a Chiefs group, right? One of the things that we tried to do at Langley was at Joint Base Langley Eustis was when we ran the Chiefs recognition ceremony. We tried to bring in the top 3 to help with committees and things like that, right? And kind of the mindset behind that was, hey, these folks are coming up. They're going to be the next ones in line to be recognized as chiefs, and so why not, one, get them to help out, because you need help putting on those ceremonies and doing events that the Chiefs group does, and then at the same time you have coaching and mentoring and a relationship developing there that who knows how long that will last, So I would say yes and no, and it's all, again, situational.
Sure.
It's based on that relationship that you develop with each individual and understanding whether they are ready for, can they even handle the more information on them right now, right? Or are they just trying to process what they have, and so sometimes it's just, hey, let's help them process what they have on their plate now. Let's not pile on some more, because sometimes we pile on and that crushes folks too.
Sure.
So.
Okay. Zach.
Yeah, I think it depends, but it has to be deliberate. So for not all chief meetings, right? If the chief group say we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z for deliberate development, that's okay. But the chiefs meetings are the only time we can really be chiefs and not lose that credibility when we step outside the room, right? This is the place where we should be able to have those frank conversations with each other, call each other out in a good way, and then go back to work. But there are other people who may not have the maturity to see that transaction happen and then still give the dignity and respect to that particular chief for how the chiefs were working together behind the scenes. And so I say If it's deliberate, there's a specific reason why, then we should bring them. But I think that's the only time we can be chiefs, and it should be held reserved for that, if that makes sense.
Fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But as far as the bringing lower ranking or different groups up, those discussions we have at the chiefs group meeting or our thought process when we solving these problems, there's nothing say we can not involve those individuals with that. Say, hey, this is my situation. This is some of the things I was considering. Let me hear your thought process on how to solve it, and then we can compare and contrast on the different ways. And we may learn something from the E8 or E7. Like, I didn't think about that. So I think there's some value added and crosstalk, but it has to be deliberate.
You know, one of my pet peeves as a command chief was, and Mark and I were going to having this discussion earlier, so that this question will start with you, Zach, is that, you know, if we want to make a difference, we have to do things differently. You know, because otherwise you're going to be doing the same shit day in, day out, you know, to do all those things. So one of the, like, I always saw, when I saw professional development panels, you get a bunch of chiefs in the panel, a bunch of airmen in the room. And I was asked, like, why don't we put a couple airmen on the panel, have a bunch of chiefs in the room asking them questions? Right? So we're not doing anything differently. So that's just one of Tim Pachase's ideas on how we can, again, like, do the same stuff with just a little different spin on it. And then, like, for me, that kind of goes back to, I don't think we open up a lot of pure avenues for airmen to speak their mind. We normally allow them to do that at the end of a commander's call, once leadership has already said what they wanted to do. So what would you want to do? So, you know, going back, so if you get a command chief job, inside your command chief, what would you want to do differently? And then after that, Mark, like, what did you differently? Or knowing, if you knew then what you know now, or if you're proud of the stuff that you did back then, what would that look like? Zach, to you.
This might not be answering your question, but I do a thing called Rally Point. I had it in Hawaii. I brought it to Advanced Air Force Base. And so it's not airmen asking the questions or things that they want to ask, they're teaching. So I'm getting away from the sage on the stage once a month where I'm teaching them X, Y, and Z. Of a roster, any individual from E1 to, you know, 06 can sign up and they talk about something that they experienced or what they did before the Air Force. And so through that involvement, people teach what they're interested in. People talk about what they're interested in. And so from that, I gather what's on the minds of the airmen.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
That does.
So it's kind of like a back way of interacting with the airmen.
It's just giving them an opportunity and see where they go with it.
Yeah, giving them a platform.
Figure out what they're passionate about.
And it runs itself now. So I brought it in. The first rally point I taught, I had the vice wing commander teach. I had a couple of senior NCOs that I handpicked. That's okay. The next one's on you guys. So that's the expectation of how this should flow. And it's not good idea fairy or let's talk about going out to the dog kennel. This is how can we make each other better.
Right.
From our experiences in or out of the Air Force beforehand. I had a E4 was on a construction business, was a school teacher. He did something else was kind of wacky before he came to the Air Force. A lot of knowledge, and he taught a couple of different things about business management and how to lead people from an E4 perspective. But he was a business owner, so guess what? I learned something too.
You bet.
So to create that platform, give them those opportunities, you'd be surprised what you learn and what comes out of that. So
Kind of that A1C in the Air Force was a PhD.
correct. Hey,
Yeah.
I have a Airman First Class in my operations group, air traffic controller, with a doctor's degree in medicine.
Amazing.
Yeah, chiropractic medicine. Wow. Good recruiter, right?
Yeah.
Or
Jeez.
a bad one.
Yeah. Your call.
Yeah.
All right. Mark, to you.
You know, so one of our other teammates, Troy Lundquist, you know, when I was coming back to the career field as the group chief in Germany, one of the greatest things he said to me, he said, "Lead by walking around. Lead by walking around." You know, you're not going to accomplish anything behind your desk answering emails all day long. You have to get out and about. You have to see where you have to get in spaces where people work, right? And you have to have real conversations with them. And so it was something that I did frequently. You know, a lot of times I'd walk in the office look at my schedule for the afternoon, and I would just get this feeling that, hey, I need to get out and interact with the team, and so I'd clear the rest of my schedule and just go drive around, stop in squadrons, see what's going on. It's something I set up early on in both times I was a command chief. I told my group chiefs and the squadron chiefs, hey, first time, it's on you, man. I'm gonna tell you when I'm coming. I'm going to allow you to put your shiny pennies out in front of me, show me all the great stuff you do, and then after that, I'm just gonna be out and about our wing. I'm gonna be walking around, man. And I'm not coming to see what bad things airmen are doing. I'm just coming to build relationships and see what it looks like. And I know we make a mess when we do work, right? Our business, we make a mess. And I know at some point it's going to get cleaned up. Now, one of the things you have to do when you do that is it has to be reality, right? So when I go walk around, I saw some things that I didn't like, but I didn't say anything about them. Because if every time I walk around, I immediately go talk to the commander or the chief, and then it now creates work for somebody.
Right.
When I walk around, nobody's going to talk to me, right?
Yes.
And so I figured out ways to bring those things to light that were maybe not quite right. But I would take a little bit of time, put some space between my visit and when I brought it so it couldn't be connected. And I'd figure out ways to bring it up without highlighting the fact that I saw that when I was walking about, But man, you talk about young airmen that are just incredible, right? Jordanian-born airman, speaks 8 languages, asks the most fascinating questions, just passionate about and so grateful for the opportunity to serve in the United States Air Force, more grateful than most of us have ever been, right? Because of his background. 39-year-old A1C, had his own business, sold it, was sitting on the beach with his dad in Costa Rica. His dad goes, "What are you gonna do with your life now?" Probably had more money than he knew what to do with.
Yeah.
And he goes, "Hey, I think I'm gonna join the Air Force, serve." And just the knowledge and the skill and the ability of this young man older gentleman now. I mean, he's 40 years old.
You bet.
Senior airman, but now, but yeah, just incredible things you can learn from just getting out and building relationships with people.
I think it's important. Yeah. Downrange, in my garrison downrange job at the 82nd EASOS, and the commander said, "How did you know about this and how do you know about that?" He never at your desk, because the airman talked to me. I don't have to get it from an email after it's escalated. I'm talking to real time and we're discussing things. So, I'm not saying email is not good. Yeah, we got to answer the email.
It's good for informing.
It is a tool to communication.
Yes.
It is not a form of communication.
Spot on.
Yeah,
It's-
absolutely. Well, hey, one of the things that, when I was at the 14th before I went to the Senior NCO Academy, one of the things we did, our small team there. So, at one point we brought and both of you, lived in that building at one point. So, we brought the ops superintendent, the squadron superintendent, and the support superintendent in that big office upstairs.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Right?
There you
So
go.
all 3 of us were there. And we had a couple rules, all right? All 3 of us could not be in the office at any given time. Somebody had to be out, You could have 2 of us in there at one time, but not 3. You could not sit at your desk more than 45 minutes at a time. And if you've been there 45 minutes, you have to be up and out and walking about, But the other thing it gave us is that ability to just turn and have a conversation and talk to each other when we needed to, It was one of the greatest things we did. But every single one of us knew the entire squadron, not just the support section, not just the ops section. When we went and walked around, the entire squadron, built relationships with everybody.
That's awesome.
And it was nothing but goodness, man. But one of the things I learned there at the 14th was to limit email, and so I didn't send a lot of email, and interestingly, I didn't receive a lot of email. So now you freed from this email chain, this thing that locks you down, and you have more time to go out and actually interact with people and go face to face, But so many of us are trying to be the first one to get the information out on email, right? And, I let the 5 other people that wanted to be that person do that for me, and then I went around and talked with folks. And
Email champion.
It's so much more productive, man.
Right. And probably a lesson for all the listeners and now watchers out there is that, that what war is going to be there tomorrow, sadly. There's rarely a decision, that has to happen right then and there.
Yeah.
Like even as a wing command chief, if a deadline was on Thursday afternoon, if I made a phone call, it could always stretch till Friday morning, like 99 times out of 100. So there's always something that can be done. So don't get bogged down in that. But then go back to the human aspect is, how are your people going to win Super Bowls if nobody wants to take the field? And now you're looking at 2 leaders who are talking about getting around, talking to your people, knowing your people, being active, being visible. Everything that we learned as leadership inside the United States Air Force, these guys are talking about here. And we're just sitting around here on a Friday night in Oklahoma City having some beers. But these are the foundational concepts that I think can help people find success to do that. And so some of the things that we were talking about before is, I think what we're talking about here is, again, not leadership concepts, but just good dudership.
Yeah.
How to be a good dude, how to be an awesome chick. And again, I'm not trying to use chick in a derogatory phrase or connotation. Not trying to do that, but I think in a common vernacular, I think we all understand that if we call up or ask about different TACPs that perhaps we don't know, hey, what do you know about Sergeant Smith? Oh, he's a good dude. Oh, she's an awesome chick. Like probably the best compliments that we can probably give each other. So as far as the people that you work with, what are some of the traits that you're looking for in those awesome dudes and good dudes and awesome chicks? I think we start with you, so we'll start with Mark.
My turn.
Yes.
So people that build relationships, is one. People that, I think both of you heard my 5 expectations of all humans. So relationships is kind of in the center. It's expectation number 3. It's centered because it revolves around all of them. But do your job better than anybody else. Be prepared to make decisions and influence decisions. Know the difference when it's my turn to make a decision versus, hey, I have an opportunity to influence the decision here and protect that right. Don't just shoot from the hip. Don't be emotional about it. Maintain high expectations and standards, right? Not only for yourself and for others. And then most importantly, have fun. And if you look at the most phenomenal human that you know, I guarantee they do all 5 of those things well, right? They do their job better than most, if not the best, right? They can make decisions or influence decisions. They build relationships with everybody. If you need to talk to somebody over in finance, they know somebody. If you need to talk to somebody over security forces, they know somebody. Doesn't matter. In the community, they know somebody, right? They've taken the time to build those relationships, and they know how it connects, right? To what they do. They maintain high standards and expectations for others. They're not afraid to hold people accountable, and they always look like they're having fun, So those are my 5 expectations of all humans, and the leaders that I know that do it successfully, they do all 5 of those things well.
Roger that. Nice.
I think the umbrella for me is to be genuine, no matter what you do. I may not agree with said topic or subject or viewpoint, but if you're genuine, I can work with that. So I hate to use the word fake people, but it's kind of shady, right? There's some other flaws going on as a leader. But I talk about love a lot. I talk about developing assumptions, cultivating assumptions, and then know the end goal. So I think as a leader, we got to know where we're going. What's the purpose? What's the task and purpose as Citizen Rangers? What's the task and purpose of what we're doing? If it's from developing people or accomplish a task. Everything you do come from love, so that means it's not self-serving. It's not to make me look good. It's not to get promoted to E12. It's just we're doing it for the right reasons, right? We're doing it to develop those airmen. And then the assumptions. I'll listen to a leader talk, And so assumptions are very important because assumptions develop or create our belief system.
You bet.
And then from our belief system, it talks about our values. And as a leader, that determines our policy and task. So if you got airmen doing crappy stuff, you probably could tailor it back to someone's poor assumption of something. And so I think those three things are big for me as a leader. Let's say, again, being a good dude or a good chick, it comes from being genuine.
You bet.
Yeah,
So for the listeners out there, if you haven't figured it out yet, I don't know how many times we've heard CAPE during the discussion so far. You've heard us talk about how people care. We've heard Zack talk about love at least twice, in different answers.
What are you trying to say?
Yeah, right? We have to care about people. Again, like the human aspect.
Yes.
If I happen to love you
Yes.
on the side of it and maybe want to buy you dinner sometime, right? It's fine. It happens. Drinks. What are you going to do?
Done.
But, caring alignment. So we're talking about task and purpose, getting aligned, doing all these things. So we're talking about the different perspectives of being genuine, or what we have as a chief, what we have as a command chief, and then we're talking about expectations through and through. So phenomenal first part of this. We're going to take a quick reset.
Go ahead. I want to come back with, if it's okay with you, I want to come back with my perspective on CAPE, because I know the team out there that has listened to you knows your perspective on it, and I just want to add some things to it from my perspective. What I think of on CAPE, it's I think it's a little different. It's not in conflict in any way, but I just want to throw in some thoughts if that's okay with you.
Nice. Chief Mark Hurst on his CAPE concept when we return. We'll see you in a bit. All right. Welcome back to the Cape Lead Podcast. Sorry for that break. We had to refuel. We had to go download. And now we're ready to attack the second part of this on the first episode of Leaders with Leaders. Have a good time. And before we went on break, we're talking to Chief Mark Hurst about his understanding of the CAPE concept, not necessarily using my vernacular, but how he internalizes and what he uses in his life. Mark, go ahead.
So I'll just tell you, I haven't spent nearly the same amount of time on CAPE specifically for leadership as you have, but as I think through it and the words kind of that you have used, and going through some of your podcasts, caring, for example, some of the things that immediately pop into my head is as a leader, leadership is about influence, right? And you have to care. Using some phenomenal leaders' words like Colin Powell, nobody cares what you know until they know that you care, right? So leadership is about caring. Another recent book that I read is The Warrior Ethos, Stephen Pressfield, right? In that book, you talked about love earlier, right? A warrior's greatest weapon is love, right? A leader's greatest weapon is love, right? Love what you do. So when I think about caring, I think about loving what I do. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, as a matter of fact. He's like, hey, do you kick the sheets off in the morning, getting ready to go do what you do? Or is it snooze, 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 right? No, I kick the sheets off, man. I'm ready to go. 4:30 in the morning, boom, kicking the sheets off, getting out there, doing my thing, right? I love what I do. And the other aspect of love is not only do you have to love what you do, but you have to love the people that are around you. I tell people all the time, you have to go to work for the person you're left and right. When you show up, it's not for you, it's for the person you're left and right each and every day, right? And most importantly, from our business, what we've done for nearly 25 years of our lives, you have to love helping your enemy die for his country or his cause a lot, right? And I've absolutely loved to do that. And so that's what I think about when I think about caring, right? From a leadership perspective.
Sure.
Alignment immediately puts the picture of the U.S. Olympic rowing team in my head, right? And so you got teams of 2 all the way up to, I believe, teams of 8 rowers, right? And you talk about extreme alignment, right? They have to be in alignment, and that's the same thing we have to do every day, right? With our certain teams, starting with our families, our family teams, it has to be in alignment, and then we come to work, and we have to be in alignment. We have to be going in the same direction. Sometimes you'll hear me say we have to get everybody in the rowboat rowing in the same direction, right? Because sometimes we have some flappers out there just trying to make us go in circles, right?
Some people are just out for the boat ride.
Yeah, exactly.
Not pulling the
Exactly.
weight.
Yeah, not pulling the
Not
weight.
pulling
Not
any
pulling the
weight.
weight. It's like, whoo. And so that's kind of what I think about when I think about alignment, you know. And when we're going towards a direction, and I can't tell you, and I can almost guarantee that you guys can both say the same thing. I didn't always agree with the direction we were going, you know. And I, you know, sometimes I had to go on walks, man. I had to go do some soul searching, and really figure out, hey, what's going on here, you know. And luckily, I was intelligent enough at the times when I was just frustrated that I could go have that walk and kind of think about it. And this is what it came down to for me when I thought that we weren't necessarily in alignment with, you know, trying to figure out, solve the problem, if you will, that you talk about quite a bit. It's like, hey, what is the problem we're trying to solve here, right? And so it'd come down to, hey, are we doing anything illegal? Are we doing anything immoral? Is this jeopardizing the safety of our team? And is the team growing, right? And so obviously I want to answer no to the first three and yes to the first one. And most of the time that I was frustrated throughout my career, it came down to this. I had a leader that was not doing things the way I would have done them. And so I was out of alignment, right? And so a lot of times when we think we're out of alignment, there's only one person out of alignment.
Right.
And it's usually you, right? And so I just offer that up to think about as you think about alignment, and you talk about alignment just for a different perspective.
And kind of not to interrupt there, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I was taught years ago is that you know, if you and your boss have a difference of opinion, the boss owns the opinion and you own the difference.
Yeah.
You know, like that's
true.
That's
Yeah.
I mean, understand. I had to learn that the hard way as a chief, as a command chief. Somebody explained that, like, wow, somebody should have really taught me that sooner. That would have saved me a lot of eggs.
Like
Yeah,
45 minutes.
absolutely.
Maybe 47
Yeah,
minutes ago.
right before that ass chewing.
Yeah, absolutely. Perspective, and perspective is everything. And you know, one of the problems that I found when I got in trouble as a leader, I was trying to do everything from my perspective, what I knew, right? The things that I had experienced, and the things that I knew, and every single one of us has a different perspective, right? And so I go back to that whole relationship thing, and understanding where people were born, understanding where the lives people led, right? You know, not everybody had a great growing up with mom and dad there, and brothers and sisters, and you know, the normal family that you call. You know, some people came in the Air Force or came in the military to get away from something that was really bad, right?
Right.
And the only way you know that is if you actually spend a little bit of time with them.
Can I piggyback on that?
Yeah, absolutely. Jump
Yeah,
on.
I've talked to a lot of guys like, hey, you know, have you thought about TACP or have you thought about this? She's like, I joined the military to not get shot at any longer. I was getting shot at before the military. Different perspective. Or you have
Absolutely.
16-year-olds making adult decisions.
Yeah.
You know, providing for their 7-year-old brother and sister. So, you know, we have to, I'm not to cut you off, but we have to seek to understand before being understood.
Absolutely.
You have to, because I mean, you look at the U.S. right now. Understand me first, not trying to understand you. We're not separating the people from the problem. There's a problem, but I'm focusing on you. Are we talking about facts or are we talking about feelings, right? International relation background, we use what's called speech, and I teach that to our airmen when we're dealing with different people. We supervise people from all over the world, definitely all over the country. We're going to deal with situations, and speech stands for social, political, economics, environment, culture, and history. And all these things play a factor from people from New York, that's 40, or someone from California, that's 18. Every part of that in their family dynamics plays a part of that. So it's an international
Cultural dynamics.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a international model on international relations, but it can apply to individuals.
You bet.
Yeah.
Hey, and if you're listening and watching right now, do me a favor, go back about 30 seconds or so and just listen to him say the speech acronym again, just so you get that. I think more of us, we miss the human part of things.
Right.
You know, it's like please go back to about a minute or so. Just listen to Zack talk about that. Like, please, please, please. We are human beings. Let each other be human beings. Not to interrupt.
No,
Phenomenal
that's
point. Phenomenal point.
Yeah, I'm sorry,
Jeez.
brother. I cut
No, not at
So,
all.
see,
This
dudes,
is
you start drinking, boom.
this is great conversation, and I love it. I mean, I could do this till 4 a.m.
So you gotta write it down though, because tomorrow we're like, what we talking about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
All this awesomeness, though. Video.
It's written down
Coming your way.
right here.
Coming
It's
your
written
way.
down right here. It's goodness. So perspective is everything, man. It really is. And when that's one of the things that, as particularly with when something doesn't go right. I always go back to perspective, and I try to figure out what their perspective was, right? And what was going on? What was going on? Because you can look at it from your perspective, and you're like, hey, and everything was perfect. Everything was lined up. I did task purpose. I gave them the expectations. Everything was perfect, right? But you have no idea what's going on in their lives. You have no idea their history, their culture, what was contributing to that failure, unless you have that relationship, unless you know, right? But you have to spend the time and the effort to build that perspective with each individual, as many individuals as you can, right? And that leads to expectations. We talked earlier before the cameras were rolling, but you have clearly defined, and your focus is about expectations. I think it's a phenomenal focus. I think it's something we all need to focus on more. To me, expectations is about aligning strengths with team objectives. Now, team objectives can be a lot of. We serve on a lot of different teams, right?
You bet.
I serve on a family team, and I have a wife and 3 kids, and that's my number one team, right? I have a purpose each and every day when I served in the military, right? A mission to do, right? And I serve on another team. And sometimes in the military, we serve on multiple teams, right? And so aligning people's strengths. I'm a strengths guy. I like to focus on strengths. That bothers some people because, people will come to you and say, hey, what do I do better? And I don't want to have what do I do better conversations. I want to say, these are your strengths. Let's use those to meet team objectives, right? And so that's kind of when I think of CAPE from my own perspective, to kind of add in to what you've already done on CAPE, which I think it's phenomenal. It's great what you're doing with CAPE. And I really appreciate it. I think it's needed. I really do.
Nice. I definitely appreciate that. I'm gonna steal the rowboat analogy.
Yeah.
That it's easy. And I did a podcast a couple days ago that just talked about how some of these metaphors just kind of speak out and just really help solidify some of these concepts to do that stuff. And then going back to perspective, kind of to your point, Zach, it was really weird as a command chief. You have to do a lot of the diversity and inclusion stuff, and which I was never happy to do. Like, did not want to do that thing, not because I don't believe in diversity and inclusion. And when I was a command chief in the AOR, my EO rep, she was amazing. She described diversity and inclusion to me as diversity is being invited to the party, and inclusion is being asked to dance. Right? So I've always loved that metaphor on how it shapes. But the problem that I've had with diversity and inclusion, as far as it relates to me, is like, who the hell wants to hear from me? I'm a heterosexual Christian white male. The only thing that people ever judge me on is being a Cleveland Browns fan. Like that is it. So what could I, like, there's no way I would know what it's like to be an African American male. Or heaven forbid, like my exec in the AOR, Master Sergeant Maria Guillen, as a lesbian Mexican, just an amazing human being and airman, but I would have no idea what she has gone through in the Air Force, in the military, in life, like all those different things, and there she was. She came to work with a smile on her face every single day. She doesn't want to hear me talk about diversity and inclusion, so it was really odd. So that was a little bit of a tangent going off of perspective, But that speech, I'd never heard the speech acronym, so I'm going to take a look at that. I think that was huge. I'm sorry, you were going to say?
So I was going to, just talking about diversity and inclusion. One of the things I think we lose in some of the conversations we have, and you kind of touched on it when you talked about speech, just kind of the friction, and the we're crossing each other by pointing fingers, right?
Right.
And the reality of it, and I believe it was Maya Angelou who talked about the tapestry, right? And when I think of the tapestry in America, right? On one side of the tapestry, you have these knotted mess. It's just ugly. Nobody wants to look at it, right? And that's our history. We can't deny it. It is what it is. None of us sitting here today, most of the people listening, didn't contribute to that history, right? But on the other side of that tapestry is beauty and strength, right? And that's what we are. Now, all of the trauma and the drama that we have created the beauty that we have as well, right? And I will tell you from my experience over the last 25 years, diversity, nobody does it better in our nation, better than inside the military, right? Nobody does it, and we're not perfect by any means.
Yeah.
We're not perfect by any means, but inside our fences, and then when we step outside the wire together, it doesn't matter
You bet.
where we came from, what color we are. All that matters is that we can execute the mission, right? Yeah.
And that ties in, I have a couple of thoughts and layers that ties into that common goal, right? So we talk about we step outside the wire. We have a common goal. We're line up on each other. Where you Christian, Muslim, Jewish, white, black, lesbian, heterosexual, doesn't matter. We're together. The assumption is you got my back. The assumption is we're on the same level. The assumption is we're working towards the same goal and we're in sync, right?
Yeah.
That's why I talked about assumptions earlier. Assumptions are very important.
Oh, absolutely.
So if I'm a black guy in whatever part of the United States, dressed a certain way, assumption is you fill in the blank, right?
Sure.
If you're a bald guy with a beard riding a motorcycle, the assumption is
Boy.
so with the assumptions, it's very dangerous. Facts are very important. So I talk about assumptions. We as a people, we as leaders, we as human beings must do our homework and shape our assumptions because it drives our beliefs, our values, our actions in our personal life and how we live our life, or as a leader, the policies and tasks that are created from those policies at work. So that's why I say assumptions in the ALE is very, very important. Also with diversity, we again seek to understand before being understood. Had a conversation about HBCUs, historically black colleges, universities. They're like, well, why you have a black college? Well, there's all a white college. Like, well, at one point, there was an all-white college. Blacks make their own college, and just because integration happened, you're not gonna dismantle those black colleges. But Tim Patricia or Mark Hurst can go to an all-black college and get a minority scholarship. It's called inclusion. But until you seek to understand why there are HBCUs in the first place, learn that you wouldn't know that you can send your kid there and get a minority scholarship. So this thing is I want to say not convoluted, but it's wrapped and there's multiple layers in that. That's why assumptions, inclusion, all these things matter. Seek the history, know the speech, all that together. So things multi-layered. But
and one of the things that I mentioned in the podcast again, it's just about getting the conversation right.
Yeah.
And that's it. And a lot of this I tie into the concept of being right and wrong. And my chicken breast analogy, I don't know if we've talked about that, is that if you guys are going to come over, the listeners and watchers here today, if you're going to come over to my house for dinner, I'm going to make chicken breast. And I put a chicken breast in front of you, and it's perfectly cooked, and it's amazing, and you cut into it, and with your Mark 1 calibrated eyeball, you can see that the middle is completely raw, and that this chicken breast is, in fact, 51% cooked. Do you eat it? No, it's gross as shit. Like, no one's going to eat that. But why, when it comes to right and wrong, the minute someone is 51% right, we declare a winner, we hoist a flag, we do a discount double check, put on the championship belt, right, and say, I'm right, you're wrong, moving on.
Yeah.
Why as leaders do we not sit back and realize, I just made somebody eat 49% of raw chicken when it came to this conversation?
Arrogance.
When it came arrogance, right? It's what, like, oh no, I can't be wrong. I'm a chief master sergeant.
Yeah.
Or I'm a command chief. I can't. But like going back to the point is like, hey, I'm wrong. I'm not nearly as good as I think I am. Whether it's communication, whether it's situational leadership, whether it's relationships, and there's always just the human factor that maybe I misspoke. That happens. But we're not nearly as good. But we need to train leaders to see the raw.
Yeah.
And how much raw we're asking people to eat when it comes to a lot of these
I
things.
think we need to understand how ignorant we are sometimes.
Amen.
Right? Just I smiled. I think you were looking at Zack, but probably the audience probably saw it. I smiled when he was talking about assumptions, and because Blake and me just 2 days ago had a conversation about assumptions, right? Because he was telling me, because he's getting ready to move schools, right? We're getting ready to move a couple towns over, and he's getting ready to move schools, and he tells me, we're sitting in the car, and he tells me, he's like, yeah, everybody down there, they're all rich kids, and they're all snobby. And I'm like, how do you know that they're all rich kids and snobby? And he's got this fascination with shoes these days. I don't know if your kids have fascination with shoes.
Sneakers, like tennis shoes?
Like and not only the shoes, but how much they cost. Like, he'll say, I go, hey man, I'm thinking about getting you these shoes. He goes, how much they cost? And I go, what does that matter? I mean, they look cool, man, right? He goes, no, you don't understand. If they're not $120, then they're not good shoes. Because he literally is judging people right now by their shoes. And I told him, I was like, hey dude, what do my shoes tell you right now? And he goes, you're old.
As you know, this is actually a perfect point to bring this up was this Leaders with Leaders concept was born of Mark's retirement ceremony. So Sally, I miss Zack. He left like hours before I got there. But what happened after his retirement ceremony, our career field manager, Matt Nugent, was in town. And so we're all staying at a hotel. We came in to celebrate Mark's phenomenal career. And we sat there that night. We're having a few drinks before the family was going to go out. And his son Blake, who's 13, correct?
Yep.
Sat there, and we're having a leadership discussion. And I think Matt had kind of turned around and just kind of asked Blake kind of haphazardly, hey, what do you think? And it was very interesting to hear a 13-year-old's view of leadership and communication and relationships. And we started videotaping. I looked at Mark like this is absolute gold. Like this is such an amazing concept. And this is, again, going back to for the first part of this video cast was, if you want to make a difference, you have to do things differently. And so that kind of got this started. Like, hey, we need to have some of these video casts to talk about it. So that's very interesting. And now it's coming full circle.
Absolutely.
But good on Blake. But that was an amazing night.
So one of the things I'm trying to get him to do is not judge people by what they look like on the outside, or what shoes they're wearing, or what clothes they're wearing. Because and I keep trying to get him. I said it's about relationships. And I probably said that 50 times now today, but until you go sit down with somebody and say, hey man, what's going on? How you doing? What where are you from? Tell me about you. Until you build that relationship, you have no idea what somebody's like, right? You can't judge somebody based on the shoes that they're wearing or the clothes that they're wearing, but that's what he does, and that's what his peers do. And we probably did the same thing when we were that age. I'm not judging him for doing it, but at what point do we grow out of that? Maybe never.
Some people never, yeah.
Maybe never, right?
Hayden's into Corvettes right now, and I tell him, hey, oh Dad, that's a nice Corvette. And I was like, all right, kid, son. It's like, all right, let's think about this. You're gonna have a $75,000 Corvette with $10,000 in your bank account, or you can have a $20,000 car with $60,000 in your bank account. So who's rich and who's not, if you want to consider, right? Who has money, right? The goal is to have a Corvette and $100,000 in your bank account, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So priority placement, right? Where do we place our priorities? Expectation management, like you talk about expectations, right? Just because they have it on their feet may not be in their wallet. That's why I tell Hayden, because he's all about Corvettes right now. I say, man, you buy you one once you get your job. But you better have a career. That's something you love, not a job, because a job pays a little bit less than a career.
Yep.
So he's learning. That's why he's walking right now. Yeah.
It'll happen. It'll happen. So we kind of talked a little bit, but again, during break, we kind of talked about why. and why the why is so important. You had some thoughts on that, Zach? Go ahead.
Yeah, Nietzsche. I was doing some research and I talk about end state, right? And talk about he who has a why can overcome any how. And so that relates to a lot of things in our society and also in the military. But we talk about suicide. I'm not a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but it seems to me that that person's why to live is overcome by what's going on, right? So they're going through different things. How they're going through these things, if they have that strong why. Same thing within the military. Why do some people choose a certain job that will have the same retirement, but will take a larger toll on their body or increased chance for injury or death in combat? There's a why there that will overcome any how I do this. It makes it more important. I just want to know what you guys' thoughts on that, as far as the how and the why.
So I'm a huge believer in the why, and I think people have heard the podcast where I talk about 8 W's, to where I don't give the 5 W's for leading and expectation, because it, kind of to your point, if you do the who, what, when, where, why, the why only modifies the what. And so that is it's not a bad way to pass information or lead an expectation in the present tense, but I think if you drop the why at the end and add it to each of the first 4, you're good. So it's not about who, what, when, where, why. It's about who and why, where and why, what and why, when and why. And you get a more complete picture of exactly what's going on to drive these things. And at a bare minimum, it gives people some increased perspective and gives them more information. And it's weird, like a phenomenal quote that I heard is, especially in today's we are drowning in information and thirsting for knowledge.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that's an important concept.
We're overcome by noise.
Right.
Overcome by noise. Yeah.
And then especially as a small tangent, during the holiday season is it's not about spending time with your family. It's about spending quality time with your family. Or I'm a big football guy, right? It's not about reps. It's about quality reps. It's about phone down, in the moment, doing all these things because I know what my why is. I know that I turned in my command chief star and I'm going to retire because I want more time with my sons. I miss the days when Noah and Hayden would play and going to the trampoline house in Hawaii, for Hayden's birthday, and doing all that, but like all that stuff, the purity of childhood and the purity of what kids do. And that was so great about hearing Blake, like he still has that purity of focus, that a completely unadulterated, what he just feels, and just real carnal belief in the human spirit that you can see manifest itself in a 13-year-old was absolutely amazing. But I'm a huge believer in why, and not to get on a huge thing, but I think when we all join the Air Force or the military, by and large, is like don't ask why, you just do what you're told. There was a time and a place for that.
Yeah.
Probably up until the invasion of Panama, when not everyone had communication, not everyone was mic'd up, and everyone had to be specifically trained to hear a command, to hear a bugle, to see a flag raised, and go execute those commands because of the communication limitations on the battlefield. Yeah. Vietnam, some guy would be on the radio, he'd get a command, he'd talk to the captain or lieutenant, they'd scream it down one line, scream it down the other line, then they'd go take that hill.
Right.
We don't have to do that anymore. This is not how we wage war. Because you have 10, 15-man special forces teams. You have a company of Rangers going out there. Everybody knows the why. Yeah. They know what's going on. They're all mic'd up. They can go out there and execute. The why is important, vitally important. And with the role that the U.S. military has on such a global scale, with such high stakes, with such limited manning and limited budget, the why is probably more important now than in any time in human history.
I would argue too. I would just add to this. So we're talking right now about big picture why, right? There's an individual why as well that I honestly believe we really need to focus on, not only as a military but as a nation, right? Why do we do what we do every day? Why do we kick the shoots off, right? And more, and this is not just the United States. This is across the globe, right? When you look at the level of individualism that is occurring, the self-focused perspective, why I do everything every day is for my self-gain, right? It is growing across the globe. You know, individualism is growing across the globe. And, you know, not everything is about self-gain, you know? As a matter of fact, at the points when it was not about me was when I found the greatest successes throughout my career, you know? And I see so many leaders who do things, and everybody knows, right? When you're doing things for the right reasons, which is for the growth and development of the team, for accomplishing the objectives, the team objectives, people recognize that. But when you're doing it for yourself, for your self-promotion, so I can get that next job, or I can get that next stripe, or I can get that next, you know, whatever it might be, right? Because we do that as humans too. Sometimes we back ourselves into this, what I call a success corner, right? And the success corner just leads to another corner, and to another corner, and another corner, right? So we tell ourselves, well, if only I could be the next rank, or if only I could be the next position, right? And what happens when we do that is it becomes about us. And everything we do is to achieve that goal, right? And it's never ending, because that goal leads to, well, if I can only be the next rank, and I can only be the next rank. And I'll tell you from experience, when you stop worrying about that stuff, when you just do what's right, and you become the good dude, right? Working for the team and team objectives, it all happens to work out somehow. I don't know why.
Right. Karma. I am damn near Buddhist. I on all that's good and holy, I'm a huge believer. The energy you put out into the universe is energy that comes back to you. I'm a huge believer in it.
I'll tell you one of the most, I won't say profound, but something that stuck with me all my career, and I think made a change. Back in the 90s, I know I'm dating myself, but back in the 90s, I was General Ryan's Chief of Staff of the Air Force driver in Bosnia. I didn't know what General Ryan and Chief of Staff of the Air Force meant. I know some important guy was going to be here, and I got to drive a little bus for this general. But anyway, when he got in here, I was a one striper. When he got in the back, and I see people acting, you know, kind of silly around this guy with all this, I said, sir, you know, you have a lot of stars on your shoulder or your collar. How did you get those? And he said this, and I didn't really understand then, but years later I did. He goes, treat every rank as if it's your last. That's all he said. Years later, I find that to believe is if you treat every rank as if it's your last, it provides clarity of thought. It provides a clear picture. It outlines and singled out the goals, right? Are you doing this because you want to please your boss and highlight yourself, or are you doing it because it's the right thing? Yeah. Right?
Yep.
You start to break away all this extracurricular crap we're doing. Am I going to stay late for work because the boss here, or I want to go home because my family's waiting for me, because I'm not worried about the next rank, right? And it gives you clarity. What am I doing? This is really important. You talk about something else by having a senior moment. Oh, I read a book 2 months ago called Leadership and Self-Deception. And it talks about, you seen that one?
Great book.
Yeah.
The Arbinger Institute.
Yeah, Arbinger Institute.
Leadership and
Self-Deception.
Yeah.
And it's about exactly what you're saying. Are you doing it to promote yourself and because you check the box? Or are you genuine?
Check the box.
Talking about, right?
Right.
Are you genuine asking? So
and developing an outward mindset.
Correct. And so they use the analogy, hey, you know, on the plane, and you don't want anyone to sit next to you. You got your newspaper really big, so no one sit next to you. You see someone struggling, and you're like, okay, let's own a seat. Hey, would you like to have a seat? You know, the person's sitting down, but they don't feel value, right? Versus you see someone struggling, you go on there and say, hey, there's a seat right here next to me. You help put the luggage up, and they come sit down. The same thing happens, someone sit next to you, but two different experiences.
Absolutely.
Right? Based on where you're coming from. You genuinely wanted to help someone. And that talks about self-deception when you do things but for the wrong reason. We're going out, we're talking to the airmen, but they can tell it's fake because I feel I have to do this as a chief, or I'm really concerned about you. It goes a little bit further into self-denial or self-deception, where we deceive ourselves. He uses newborn baby, mother stays at home, you're the working father, the baby cries, your first thought is to get up, check on the baby. That's your natural instinct. That's what you should do. But then you say, you know what? Well, I'm a hardworking person. I'm the breadwinner. She should get up. Now you're deceiving yourself, right? But then I say, okay, she doesn't recognize the great things that I'm doing and all the hard work I'm putting in. She's not a good person because she's not respecting me. And then you start to talk yourself into this rabbit hole where you're trying to justify your self-deception. In the first place, you should have got up. And now you're trying to justify why you didn't, and now the betrayal of someone else's fault why you didn't do what you're supposed to do. So it's a pretty good book.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you end up having, kind of like we were talking about earlier, you're not having the conversation you think you're having.
Correct.
So that ends up being
and the impact
a huge
and the results.
You bet. And again, like feeding into expectations.
Not get on a tangent, but yeah.
No, fair. But I'll tell you before I kind of wrap up. So I want to wrap up with one, what I think common theme for tonight. But what I would like to do is kick it back. For any last bits of advice, any last tidbits, any wrap up that you have, anything that has kind of sparked anything tonight that you would like to say to our listeners and our viewers when it comes to leadership and or your experiences just as a human being. We're inside the U.S. military, we're inside the U.S. Air Force, and the three of us had extreme Army experience as well. So if you want to bring that up, anything that you'd like to share with our viewers.
Sure. I would tell people to build their character, regardless of characters are super important. Your character is going to shape your beliefs, and that's going to shape who you are as a leader. And if you don't have that foundation, strong foundation of having a good character, you may get lost in the sauce as far as what's right and what's wrong. Where's your moral compass? Where to bend, where not to bend, where to stand strong. Like shooting azimuth, I'm going to have to deviate, but when I get back on azimuth. And if you don't know where you're going, you don't know if you're lost, if you're off track. So I say that's huge. Staying true to yourself. And the bottom line is treat humans like humans, right? Back to that assumption. Get to know people. When you assume certain things, it makes an ass out of you and me. I remember that a long time ago, right? Yeah. When you assume, you make an ass out of you and me. So, assumptions are dangerous. Facts are important. And we need to make sure we develop our character. If I had to summarize.
Awesome, Zach. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Thanks. Mark.
So, I said it probably 50 times a day, but it's all about relationships, right? You have to spend the time to build relationships. It doesn't matter if it's the secretary at the front office, the youngest warrior on the team, or the commander, right? And everywhere in between, build relationships. Zack talked about treating people with dignity and respect, and treating everybody the same. You have to do that. One thing I think I want to highlight. We didn't talk a whole bunch about it, but how we respond to the things that happen each day, right? And we really have two choices. We can be a victim to the world and act like, hey, I can't throw our hands up and I can't do anything, or we can be a hero, right? And we can just hey, these are the things I can control. These are the things I can't. Let go of the things you can't control, and control the things you control, and move forward. I've just seen too many great warriors, great leaders falter, give up, throw their hands up, walk out, because they allowed themselves to become a victim. During the break we talked about Viktor Frankl, the author, psychologist, survived the Holocaust. Lost his entire family, and one of the things he gave me that really sticks with me is that each day, the one thing that nobody can take away from us is our choice of how we respond to things, right? And so we have a choice, and if we give that choice up by responding negatively or through emotion, things like that, we don't put space in between action and response. If we don't put that space in there, that time to think through it and then respond in an appropriate way, we have just given up our choice. And so the listeners out there, I just tell you, don't give up your choice. Be a hero, don't be a victim. Don't allow the circumstances around us, the noise and all the drama that happens around us, shape your day. You control your day. You control the response. Take that and do good things with it.
Awesome, Mark. Thanks. The one thing I kind of want to wrap up with is that when this is a quote unquote leadership discussion, but we need to talk about the definition of leadership, or roles and responsibilities of leaders, and how we apply that. Because again, I don't care about this being a leadership conversation. It goes back to being a good dude.
Yeah.
If you can be a good dude and an awesome chick, that's what I want us to kind of focus on. And I think the one thing that was really involved in each single answer here was love.
Yeah.
Love and caring, and how we care for each other. And it's weird for me because when I try and look at the definition of leadership, it is absolutely impossible. And General Stanley McChrystal, in his new book Leaders, he says that really in his intro, talking about they looked through umpteen different publications to try and define leadership, and had hundreds of different definitions and how it's going to go. And it's just tough because the thing that I try and do, and I've kind of taught this for a couple of years now, is when I try and explain leadership, it's kind of leadership has to be a labor of love.
Yes.
But it kind of corresponds to how my ability to understand leadership is how I understand love, because the love that I have for my teammates is the love that is different than the love that I have for my wife, or my children, or my parents, or my brother, or anyone else in the world. Like they're all, or like my dog. Like there's all different kinds of love, and there's all different kinds of leadership. So whether we're going to talk about one-on-one leadership, or small team dynamics, or large team dynamics, or in an Air Force, and squadron, group, wing, numbered Air Force, MATCOM, like all these different types of leadership. How are we going to define that? Like, do we even want to try? Like, how are we going to pin the tail on a donkey and say this is MF leadership, when there's so many finite ins and outs? And the first guy that hired me for a command chief job, Colonel John Price, had a phenomenal quote. I'm going to take it to the day I die. He's like, leadership isn't difficult, but it is complex. And it's these complexities and our understanding of love and communication and relationships that's going to make this so extremely difficult, extremely complex, extremely worthwhile, and at the end of the day, it's going to make us all better dudes, and it's going to make us all awesome chicks. So a little bit of food for thought before we wrap up the podcast here. So I appreciate you tuning in. Stay tuned here in the next few weeks when I'm going to interview two of my civilian friends that I grew up with. One is an executive at Hallmark Corporate. The other is a partner at a law firm, both live in Kansas City, Missouri. So we'll have that, and hopefully we'll have Chief Rob Zackery back on, Chief almost retired Mark Hurst back on. But I really appreciate your time tuning in here. And this is Chacha reminding you to always educate, anticipate, and dominate. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks.